The grand ballroom shimmered under the glow of crystal chandeliers, each facet scattering light like tiny stars across the polished marble floor. Laughter, the soft clink of glasses, and the low murmur of conversation filled the air, weaving a symphony of celebration. Yet in a quiet corner, separated by the swirls of elegantly dressed couples, sat Emma, her back straight but shoulders tense. She adjusted the neckline of her navy blue dress for what felt like the 10th time, trying to sit with an air of confidence she didn't feel. Her hands rested around the stem of a half-filled glass of sparkling water, the bubbles rising like her unspoken thoughts. Every table nearby was a portrait of togetherness. A man whispering into a woman's ear, friends laughing over shared jokes, a child tugging playfully at a parent's hand. And there she was, alone, amidst a sea of intimacy she hadn't expected to witness tonight. Emma's gaze drifted across the room, catching glimpses of other mothers with partners by their side, of women wrapped in the comfort of someone's arm. She thought of her own life. The balancing act of being a single mom, the endless hours at work, the sacrifices that left her nights lonely and her heart quietly wishing. She sighed softly, forcing a smile for the occasional passerby who gave her an acknowledging nod. It was then that she noticed him. Alexander Cole, CEO of one of the most influential companies in the city, moved through the crowd with that unmistakable air of authority, but not arrogance. There was a warmth to him, a subtle charisma that drew attention without demanding it. His sharp suit contrasted with the soft elegance of the ballroom, and yet his eyes found her almost immediately. "Mind if I join you?" His voice was low, smooth, and only for her. Emma felt a flutter of surprise. She hesitated for a moment, then moved her purse aside. Alexander sat down, glancing at her with an almost gentle curiosity. "You're here alone," he said. There was no judgment, only an understanding that felt rare in a room full of strangers. Emma forced a laugh. "Circumstances," she said, unsure why she felt compelled to explain. He leaned in slightly, the faint scent of his cologne wrapping around her senses. "Then let's fix that," he murmured. "Pretend I'm your husband tonight. Let me take care of the awkward." Her chest tightened at the offer, part disbelief, part hope. For the first time that evening, someone noticed her, not just her role as a mother or a professional, but her presence, her vulnerability. Emma studied his face and found sincerity there, mixed with a mischievous hint that made her lips twitch into a genuine smile. "All right," she whispered, almost to herself. "Let's pretend." The music swelled, and Alexander extended his hand. She took it, stepping onto the dance floor. For the first time tonight, surrounded by strangers, Emma felt like she belonged. The music shifted to a slow, melodic waltz, the kind that made couples glide effortlessly across the floor. Emma felt her heart flutter as Alexander guided her gently by the hand, his touch confident yet reassuring. For a moment, she let go of her self-consciousness, allowing herself to be carried along with the rhythm. "You're a natural," Alexander said softly, his voice low enough that only she could hear. There was a teasing warmth in his tone, and she felt herself smiling despite the lingering tension in her shoulders. "I haven't danced in years," Emma admitted, her cheeks warming. "I'm worried I'll step on your feet." He chuckled, a sound rich and easy. "Then I'll just take the blame," he said, tilting his head so their foreheads almost touched. "Besides, it's not about perfection. It's about enjoying the moment." For the first time all night, Emma believed him. She let her guard slip a little, noticing how the soft glow of the chandeliers reflected in his eyes, giving them a kind of warmth she hadn't expected. Alexander seemed to notice her in the way people rarely did, his gaze steady, curious, almost protective. As they moved together across the floor, Emma felt a surprising sense of freedom. She imagined herself in a different life, one where her responsibilities didn't weigh so heavily on her shoulders, where she could be just Emma for a few hours. Alexander's presence made it feel possible. "You're smiling," he said quietly. "I like that. I almost forgot how it felt," she confessed, glancing up at him. There was a vulnerability in her eyes she didn't usually show, and yet he seemed to welcome it rather than judge. The song lingered in the air, soft and intimate, and for a fleeting moment, the rest of the ballroom disappeared. There were no curious onlookers, no reminders of her loneliness, just the two of them, moving together as if they had danced like this for years. Alexander leaned a little closer, his hand brushing hers with deliberate warmth. "Pretend or not," he murmured. This feels real. Emma's breath caught. She didn't know what to say, and perhaps that was the point. She allowed herself to be swept up in the moment, letting the music, the dance, and the unexpected connection fill the empty spaces in her heart. As the song drew to a close, Alexander dipped his hand toward her back, giving her a gentle spin that ended with her facing him again. Emma laughed softly, the sound lighter than it had been in months. Tonight, maybe pretending wasn't the only thing that felt real. After the last strains of the waltz faded, Alexander led Emma toward a quieter corner of the ballroom, away from the chatter and swirling dancers. A small seating area, tucked behind a golden screen and bathed in soft candlelight, offered a sense of privacy she hadn't realized she needed. "You're enjoying this," Alexander said with a teasing lilt, sinking into one of the velvet chairs. He gestured toward her. "Sit. Catch your breath." Emma eased into the chair, her heart still racing from the dance. I don't usually come to events like this," she admitted. "I always feel out of place." He tilted his head, studying her as if memorizing every line of her face. "I can see that," he said softly. "But here you are, standing out in a room full of people, and not just because of how beautiful you look." Her cheeks warmed at the compliment, and she looked down at her hands, twisting the edge of her dress. "You make it easier," she whispered, unsure why she was revealing so much. "Like I'm not just pretending." Alexander leaned forward, his elbows resting lightly on his knees. "Maybe pretending isn't such a bad thing," he murmured. "Sometimes it gives us a chance to be someone we want to be, even if just for a night." Emma met his gaze, feeling a pull she hadn't expected. "And, what if the pretending feels too real?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. He smiled, slow and confident, letting his words hang between them. "Then maybe it's not pretending at all," he said, reaching out to lightly brush a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was casual, yet deliberate, leaving a warmth that spread through her chest. A lull settled over them, the ambient music of the ballroom now a distant hum. Alexander's presence was magnetic, making the rest of the room fade away. Emma felt the familiar weight of her responsibilities loosen, replaced by something daring, something thrilling. "Alexander," she started, then stopped, unsure if she wanted to speak her thoughts aloud. He leaned back slightly, giving her a gentle, reassuring nod. "You don't have to say anything," he murmured. "Just be here with me. Tonight." Emma let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Her fingers brushed his lightly, and for the first time that evening, she allowed herself to imagine a life where moments like this weren't fleeting, where laughter, warmth, and companionship weren't luxuries but constants. For now, though, the world could wait. Tonight, they had their corner, their dance, and a connection that, even if temporary, felt startlingly real. The night had deepened, and the ballroom was now bathed in a softer, golden glow. Guests had begun to drift toward the exits, laughter fading into quiet conversation. Yet Emma and Alexander remained in their little corner, cocooned from the rest of the world. "You know," Alexander said, his voice low and teasing, "if anyone asks, we're a perfect couple. People might even get jealous." Emma laughed softly, the sound lighter than it had been all night. "I doubt anyone would believe it," she said, shaking her head. "After all, you're a CEO, and I'm, well, me." He reached out, taking her hand gently. "No, well, me," he corrected. "Tonight, you're exactly who you're meant to be. Confident, radiant, unforgettable." Her heart skipped a beat, and she looked down at their joined hands, surprised by how natural it felt to let him be close, to let him in. For months, she had been wrapped up in schedules, responsibilities, and worries, never allowing herself a moment of indulgence, a moment for herself. And now, here he was, making it feel safe to do exactly that. "Alexander," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't even know what to say. Tonight, it's been," she trailed off, lost for words. He leaned closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You don't have to say anything," he whispered. "Just let it be. Let tonight be yours." Emma felt a thrill run through her chest, the tension she'd carried all night melting away. For a moment, it didn't matter that this was pretend, that they were strangers in a ballroom full of people. What mattered was the connection, the warmth, the gentle electricity that had built between them all evening. Then, As if drawn by the same unspoken force, Alexander slowly pulled her into a dance. Not just the practiced movements of earlier, but a closeness that allowed them to sway freely, hearts almost in sync. She rested her head lightly against his shoulder, letting the music and the quiet intimacy carry her. "Maybe pretending isn't enough," he murmured into her hair. "Maybe tonight, we don't pretend at all." Emma's breath caught. She looked up at him, meeting his eyes, and for the first time that evening, she felt seen. Not as a mother, not as a professional, not as someone trying to manage life alone, but as herself, fully and unapologetically. And in that golden glow, with the last guests trickling out and the chandeliers casting gentle reflections on the floor, Emma realized she wasn't alone anymore. Tonight, even if just for a few hours, she had been cherished, wanted, and, perhaps, had found the possibility of love where she least expected it.